This is a sample lecture from my oil painting course, How to Paint from Beginner to Master. If you'd like to watch a preview of the course, just click the link below and it will take you to my site. Okay, you're ready to start your color painting. As you can see, I have my underpainting, which has had 24 to 48 hours to dry. I have my photo reference off to the side. I'm zoomed in more on the painting so you can see what I'm doing on my palette and with my brush strokes as I work. And on the right I have my grayscale and greenscale mixed out and ready to go. Over here on the right I've put down a pile of burn umber. That's going to come in handy. The brushes we'll be using for this painting are a detail brush, a 1/4 inch angular shader, and a 1/2 inch angular shader. I've done my best to streamline the selection of brushes I use in this tutorial to keep your costs down. I know buying brushes is one of the biggest expenses of oil painting, and I would rather you buy 3 good brushes than a bunch of cheap brushes that make painting more difficult. And I'm just going to put down a small pile of liquid to mix into my paints as I work. Begin with the background, just like we did on the underpainting. Start painting it in with your 1/2 inch angular shader, using a combination of 10th value green mixed with 10th value gray to mute it. As you can see, I'm thinning the paint out with liquid, just as much as I did in the first coat, but on the second coat it looks opaque, thanks to the underpainting. I'm still making sure to apply my brush strokes in random directions. That's especially important when it comes to large, flat areas. There's no information there, so you want to keep the texture looking as interesting as possible. This is why I had you leave space between the grayscale and the greenscale. You're going to be mixing them together the entire duration of the painting. If anything, I usually give myself more room, but I wanted to make sure my palette fit in frame. Just paint right up to the edge of the pair. Next, move on to the foreground. I'm guessing it's between 2nd or 3rd value. Let's see. It is between 2nd and 3rd value for me, but remember our values are going to be slightly different. Just paint in the flat value as you did in the underpainting. Once I've put in enough of the foreground, I'll use my dry 1/2 inch angular shader to blend the 2 values together. Using a large, dry, soft brush is a great way to get a soft blend between 2 values. Just clean and dry your brush, then gently drag it over the 2 values. It's okay if you go over the plate a little. We're going to redefine those lines in a second. That's why we work background to foreground. Okay, now I'll switch to my 1/4 inch angular shader and redefine the edge of this plate using a little first value white. Now I'll just start filling in the rest of the plate in the area. It looks like 2nd value. Maybe even a little 3rd mixed into that gradient. Can you see that subtle gradient from 3rd value to 2nd value? I know it doesn't seem like much, but little things like that are what will make the plate look glossy. So do your best to make that gradient nice and smooth. I'm still using my 1/4 inch angular shader for this. Now fill in the foreground right up to where that drop shadow starts. Still using 3rd value. A little 2nd in there too. I'm going to take some artistic freedom here and make it a little darker down in the bottom corner, even though it's not in the photo. That's going to give the image more depth. Okay, let's get a little 9th value on our 1/4 inch angular shader and put in some of that drop shadow. Sorry that my hand's in the way, I'm just blending the shadow into the foreground gray a little. Let's put this reflection on the side of the plate here. It's going to be almost first value. I know these are subtle characteristics, but they make a huge difference in the painting. I'm going to put in the inner rim of the plate now. I've switched to my detail brush and I'm using fourth value. This looks like first value, and I'll switch back to my 1/4 inch angular shader because this is a larger area to fill in. I'm switching back to my detail brush to blend the edge of the rim into the plate. If you look carefully at the plate, notice there's a little bit of color from the pear reflected into it. It's very subtle, so just take a tiny amount of first value green and soften into the white we already put down, which should still be wet. I'm just going back into the rim of the plate and defining it a little more. Next, I'll put in the little flourishes in the reflection with my detail brush using third value. Now move down to the rim of the plate with some first value white. I know it's intuitive to use a detail brush for parts like this, but use the edge of your 1/4 inch angular shader. That's what it's meant for. Now fill in some more of the shadow, then work it into the plate and foreground. Pay attention to how hard or soft you make the edge of that drop shadow. Getting aspects like this right are what make or break a painting. It's true, all the detail in the world won't matter if you don't get the broad strokes and values right. But there's no rush. Oil paints stay wet for hours. Just add 10th value to the drop shadow and third value to the foreground if the line gets too soft. Make a hard edge again and reblend it. I'm going to move to the stem of the pear now, using a detail brush and that pile of burnt umber I put off to the side. There's a little rim light on the left side of the stem. Mix a tiny bit of 4th value gray and 4th value green together and put it in with your detail brush. Let's start putting some color into this pear. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch angular shader and start with 2nd value green. I'm just going to fill in around the highlights on the light side of the pear. Remember to leave the highlights for last. You should still just be filling in the flat values. Don't paint any little freckles on the pear end, just save those for the 3rd coat. The 3rd coat is your opportunity to fix any mistakes you made, and the detail coat. If you look closely at the color of this shadow, you'll see that it has some brown in it. So I'm going to pick up a little of that burnt umber I put off to the side earlier and mix some 4th value green into it. I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th value now, and I'm blending it into the shadow color I just put down to lighten it up a bit. So, remember how the plate picked up the color of the pear in its reflection? Well, this is the reflection of the plate in the pear, so it's going to have a little 2nd value gray in there. And just mix in a little green too. I'm going to put the pear's highlights in now using pure titanium white, and I'm still just using a 1/4 inch angular shader. I'm just blending the highlight into the color around it. Now I'm going back to my burnt umber 4th value green mixture to put in this midtone between the light side of the pear and the shadow. I'm adding a little gray in it to neutralize it a bit because shadows tend to be less bright. Doing this will make the transition from shadow to light less abrupt. Next, I'm going to mix a color for the shadow. I'll start with some burnt umber and add it to 7th value green. And again, I'll bring in some gray to neutralize it. And that's too dark, so let's lighten it up with some 5th value green and see how that looks. I think that's better. Notice that I'm not blending it into the lighter side yet. Just leave a hard line between them while you work out all the values. It's less confusing if you think of the pear as shapes with defined lines. Get the values right first, then worry about the blends. The bottom half of the shadow on the pear is lighter, so I'm going to add some 5th value to my shadow mixture to lighten it up. Now you should have a hard line where the shadow meets the light side of the pear. So I'm going to clean and dry off my 1/4" angular shader and use it to soften the two values together. The trick is to dab the two areas together using a dry brush and work your way up the pear. Using that dry brush technique, go back and blend the rest of the values a little more. Your painting should be starting to come together now. I'm just going to take a tiny bit of this burnt umber and put in the drop shadow from the stem using my detail brush. I'm going to fill in the background color behind the pear now, and that'll be a good opportunity to fix its shape and soften the edge into the background so it doesn't look too stark or cut out. On to this lighter area of the shadow. I'm going to try a combination of burnt umber and 5th value mixed with some 7th value. That looks right. Since it doesn't have any definable edge, I'm just going to mix it into the shadow above it as I paint it in. Now I'll pick up some of this 8th value and burnt umber mix I used for the shadow earlier and continue the shadow down until the two values meet. Okay, that's the first half of this lecture. To watch the rest, please visit my website. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great tips on traditional drawing and painting techniques. And visit my online art school, the Beginner to Master Art Academy, if you'd like to preview the full course, as well as oil and acrylic painting courses for both beginners and experienced artists. Start your journey today.